Pioneer brand canola with Optimum Gly, the highest yielding glyphosate tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens here.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. I am your host for the day, Lindsay Smith, and joining me now out of Denver, Colorado, it's Matt Makens with Makens Weather. How are you, Matt?
I'm well. Thank you for having me. Hope everyone's doing all right.
Yeah, we're doing well. It is, we're going to talk weather, and it is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful week in Ontario, but I have to tell you, it was darn cold for a good week.
Yeah, it was. You extended that
Yeah.
cold. You sent it down toward the Great Lakes and into our upper Midwest here in the States. So yeah, we were reminded what's about to come in, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bit of a like, hey, make sure you're getting ready for fall because it's
That's
coming.
right.
Now it did though. If we can maybe start there, let's start in Ontario. We can work our way through. We do have, I think, decent crop potential in the province for sure. Soybeans perhaps a bit more variable, but there's a lot of crop a long way from the finish line here, and that cold weather, not what we needed. What's in store for the next couple weeks?
Overall, there's most of the moisture is we'll get some, but it's not gonna be a surplus. Most of the moisture is gonna be to the west in the prairies, okay? Especially, the next couple of days, today through the next couple of days. As we look at kind of the longer term picture, okay, I'll shrink it down, but long term, for the next several months through fall, we are likely to stay warmer than average. That can help sustain a harvest if we need to extend a little bit, whatever that case may be. But now let me shrink that down, okay? Because even if the outlook, which has been warmer than average and continues that way, we can still get these little chunks of, say, 3 or 4 days where we get too cool, right? And we have that frost potential. We saw that last week. It's out in the Maritimes. Tomorrow morning, they're going to have a frost. So we'll have to watch for those short-term impacts. So when you hear that the long-range outlook is warmer, don't ignore that short-term frost or killing freeze even. There can be that potential this time of the year, obviously.
Okay, that's not the news we wanted, but it's the weather. None of us get to choose it. So there you go. Now, I think that, for the West, certainly, there's many areas that would be thankful to get this moisture, although could it not have come in June or even July and not at harvest time? That's always a question. But you did mention perhaps a bit more moisture to the west. Is it looking like we might get some soil moisture recharge for those areas that really need it?
Yeah, last 30 days, we've seen the drought numbers really skyrocket throughout the prairies, mostly the western. Over the next few days, so starting now through about Thursday or Friday or so, a lot of the central to western prairies will pick up 40, 50, 60 centimeters, or millimeters, excuse me. So a good amount of rainfall. So for the next 2 weeks, wetter than average for that region. And then it will dry off beyond this weekend. But it's looking at a favorable pattern between now and say the weekend. And there's not necessarily a lot of cold in that area. So if folks are worried about frost there's going to be snow in the mountains. Great, great, send it up there.
We like
But
it.
down below, we're not necessarily looking at much of a cold impact, just cooler, if you will. But yeah, a good amount of water there for the next 3, 4 days or so.
Okay, so that of course is all well and good for what we do here in Canada, but ultimately, when it comes to the type of weather that's going to move the markets, that really all comes down to the U.S. corn crop, the U.S. soybean crop. We saw from the tour the incredible yield potential that's potentially out there. What are we seeing for the trend for the weather in those critical areas that are really going to make or break this crop?
Sure. Over the next several weeks, there's going to be water that hits mostly our central and northern corn areas. That can be a potential impact on harvest as we approach that point, obviously. The longer range outlook, though, closer to our harvest times, prime times there, it looks like we'll have favorable windows for field work, some drier periods. So the frequency of storms here has decreased coming out of the summer, which can be more favorable, obviously, for us to bring in the grain, obviously, there. But over the next, say, week or so, there's still going to be some wet pockets in there. So field work issues for, say, 10 days, hit a drier pocket. Go forward, it looks like next month, October, will be drier than how September has panned out to be. Temperature-wise, we've had some cooler areas, a little bit of frost on the far northern fringes of our grain areas, but we're not necessarily worried about frost down here like you have been up there, and that's a good thing. So now we're just going to time out the precipitation and those favorable chunks of time.
All right. Now, I don't want to talk about winter, but we have to talk about winter. And that is a ways out. However, it feels like if we're going to even consider what comes after harvest and the dreaded W, we often, the discussions turn to La Nina and El Nino and those phenomena. What, at least initially, does it look like as we look forward into the later months? What, what might we see with those trends coming into winter?
Okay, for the remainder of this year, for the remainder of 2024, La Nina is very likely to move in. It's already developing in the ocean conditions. That's where it's technically defined, but it's already in the atmosphere. The atmosphere is behaving very La Nina-like. And classically in the fall, that can deliver moisture to the central and western prairies. It kind of cuts um, it kind of cuts Ontario and Quebec in half. Some get water, some are really dry in that pattern because it's kind of like what's left from the prairies to reach us at that point. And temperature-wise, during falls with La Nina, we can be quite mild, especially central and eastern areas. But once we hit winter, so December, January into February, you'll notice, wow, the cold is getting a lot colder and it's staying longer. Not necessarily a wetter period for winter, but it's certainly going to be colder. So, in quick summation, compare this incoming winter to last. It will be colder.
Hmm.
We will likely have more frequent snow, but that doesn't mean I don't want it to sound like it's going to be snowier, just more frequent systems. But yeah, plan on it being a colder winter.
I don't know, Matt. I asked you on the show, and this is what you give me. Although this is, you know what is it? I mean, we're forewarned, right? So for those of us who have livestock, make sure you've got your hay secured and make sure that you're ready for those colder biases, those colder systems that work through. So that's okay. Also book your vacations. That's what you're
Yeah,
telling
book
me.
your vacation south, buy your hay
Okay.
now. It's favorable
Yeah,
price compared to
that's right.
where it will be in a few months. And then
Good.
we'll sit out the cold together down south
Yeah,
somewhere where we're all warm.
I like it. Okay. All right. So now what does a La Nina though mean for the West? What does that mean for the prairies?
Uh, Fall can be favorable for water. But once we start to get to winter, especially the early winter, say through Christmas and New Year's, you can get a lot of those Chinook winds coming through. So the east side of the Rockies there toward the western prairies, they can have really dramatic temperature swings. Very warm with a Chinook, and then you're cold all of a sudden. You can get these winters where, hey, we're brown Christmas. Where's the water, and that's kind of a setup. So for early to mid fall, favorable with La Nina to get water on the prairies, and then we dry out pretty progressively through winter and start off spring on a dry note. And this is where we can run into some soil moisture issues that hit the prairies.
Okay. So conserve that soil moisture that should be falling, we hope, this fall.
Should be falling.
All
Yes,
right.
we with a warmer outlook, it's favorable because this fall moisture, it's falling on thawed ground,
Yeah.
soak it in, and then freeze it.
All right.
That's the hope.
That's the hope. Okay. Matt Makens, where can people go to find more on Makens Weather?
Go to makensweather.com. Lots of stuff there for Canada, the States. Also Canfax, a product from you guys out of Calgary. There's monthly updates sent or excuse me, quarterly updates with outlooks, long range stuff, discussions on their website. So canfax.ca.
All right. Matt Makens, thank you so much for joining me on the show today.
My pleasure. Thank you.